The massive Trilaxian ship hung in the sky above New Mexico, its metallic surface reflecting the morning sunlight. For 3 days, it had remained there, silent and watchful, as the people of Earth held their collective breath. In a hastily assembled command center below, Dr. Eric Mason adjusted his tie for the 5th time. As NASA's leading xenobiologist, he never expected to actually meet aliens. Next to him, Captain Lisa Rodriguez stood at perfect attention, her uniform crisp despite the 36 sleepless hours they'd all endured. "They're coming down," announced General Warren, his voice unusually quiet as everyone watched the monitors. A beam of blue light stretched from the ship to the desert floor. 3 tall, slender figures descended slowly. The aliens had 4 arms, each in skin that shifted colors like oil on water. Their large, pupilless eyes seemed to take in everything at once. Dr. Mason whispered to Rodriguez, "Remind the military not to point weapons. These beings crossed galaxies to get here. They could have destroyed us without landing if that was their plan." The captain nodded. "Already done. Though honestly, I'm more worried about you scientists embarrassing us than I am about the military." A smile briefly crossed Mason's face before vanishing as the door opened. It was time. The meeting area was a simple white tent. Inside, 3 tables formed a triangle. The aliens took one side, moving with fluid grace that reminded Mason of underwater creatures. Ambassador Zix Torv, as the central alien introduced itself, spoke first. The translator devices worked surprisingly well after the aliens had spent days analyzing Earth's broadcasts. "We represent the Galactic Council, a union of 37 spacefaring civilizations," Zix Torv said. Its voice sounded like chimes through the translator. "Your world has been noticed due to your unusual communication patterns and rapidly advancing technology." Dr. Mason nodded. "We're honored by your visit. I'm Eric Mason. This is Captain Lisa Rodriguez, and we represent Earth's scientific and defense communities." The meeting progressed smoothly. The aliens explained their peaceful mission, their civilization's history, and the basic structure of the Galactic Council. Humans, they said, were being considered for probationary membership, a trial period to see if Earth would fit into the galactic community. "We find your species fascinating," said Zix Torv, its skin rippling from green to blue. "Your creativity and problem-solving abilities are remarkable. Yet we notice concerning patterns in your history and culture." Captain Rodriguez leaned forward. "What concerns you about us?" "You are." The alien paused, searching for the right word. "Chaotic. Unpredictable. You seem to thrive on risk in ways our predictive models struggle to understand." Dr. Mason smiled. "That's a fair assessment. We're still growing as a civilization." The alien ambassador tilted its head, a gesture they'd learned meant curiosity. "Perhaps an example would help us understand your thinking. We have reviewed your global communication networks and noticed a common phrase. When considering options, your people often ask, 'What's the worst that could happen?'" Mason and Rodriguez exchanged glances. "Yes, we say that," Mason replied carefully. "So, regarding joining the Galactic Council," Zix Torv asked innocently, "what's the worst that could happen?" Captain Rodriguez coughed to hide her laugh. Dr. Mason's eyes widened slightly. "Well," Mason began, "in the absolute worst case, your technology could be incompatible with our biology, causing a pandemic that wipes out humanity. Or we might accidentally violate some critical galactic law and bring down punishment on our planet. Perhaps exposure to advanced technology too quickly could collapse our economic systems and cause global unrest." The alien's skin turned pale yellow. What the humans would later learn indicated alarm. "Those are extreme scenarios," Zix Torv said. "Oh, I'm just getting started," Mason continued. "We might also face radical religious cults viewing aliens as demons, or corporate exploitation of alien technology, creating dangerous power imbalances. Or, Eric," Captain Rodriguez interrupted gently, noticing the aliens' growing discomfort. The other aliens were whispering to Zix Torv now, their skin cycling through colors rapidly. Fascinating, Zix Tord finally said. You imagine these catastrophic outcomes so easily. It's just how we approach problems, Rodriguez explained. We imagine the worst, then work backward to prevent it. The aliens conferred again before Zixtorv spoke. We believe we understand better now. Despite your concerning disaster imagination, we see value in your perspective. The Council confirms its invitation for Earth's probationary membership. As the meeting concluded, one of the other aliens whispered to Zixtorv, perhaps we should avoid asking humans that particular question in the future. Zixtorv's skin rippled with agreement. They had no idea how right they were. 6 months after first contact, the massive Galactic Council space station loomed ahead of the small Earth shuttle. Joe Franklin pressed his face against the viewport, his eyes wide with wonder. The station was shaped like a giant wheel with spokes extending from a central hub, and it sparkled with lights that made it look like a city in space. First time seeing it up close, asked Commander Petal from behind him. Joe nodded, too amazed for words. As one of Earth's top engineers, he had been selected for the first human delegation to the Galactic Council. His job was to learn about alien technology and help integrate Earth's systems with those of the Federation. It's beautiful, Joe finally managed to say. The docking process was smooth. After passing through a series of chambers that adjusted to Earth atmosphere, the human delegation was greeted by a group of aliens from different species. The station administrator, a tall blue being named Sorlak, welcomed them. We are pleased to have humans join us on the station, Sorlak said through a translator device. Each of you will be assigned to your area of expertise. Joe was paired with Kvex, the station's chief engineer. Kvex had 6 limbs, a bulbous head, and skin that looked like polished copper. He spoke in clicks and whistles that the translator converted to English. You will observe our power systems, Kvex explained as they walked through corridors filled with strange machines. They are the most advanced in the galaxy. The engineering section was massive. At its center was a chamber that glowed with a bright purple light. Kvex explained that it was an antimatter containment system that powered the entire station. This technology has been perfected over 3,000 years, Kvex said proudly. The containment field has never failed in the history of the Federation. Joe studied the system carefully. He noticed several design elements that seemed strange to him. The backup systems were all connected through the same circuit pathways, and the cooling system relied on a single distribution method. Interesting design, Joe said diplomatically. On Earth, we would approach this differently. Kvex made a sound that the translator interpreted as laughter. Your planet still burns fossil fuels. Our system is perfectly safe. As they continued the tour, a junior engineer was performing maintenance on one of the cooling pipes. The alien looked up at Joe with curious eyes. We rarely have visitors in engineering, the junior engineer said. What do you think of our antimatter system? It's impressive, Joe replied honestly. I heard that humans always ask strange questions about disasters, the junior engineer said. Our instructor mentioned this in our briefing about Earth. So tell me, what's the worst that could happen with this system? Kvex made a gesture of disapproval, but Joe was already thinking. Well, Joe began, if the magnetic containment field fluctuated during a solar radiation spike, you could get quantum tunneling of the antimatter through the barrier. Or if these cooling systems were to fail simultaneously, the resulting heat could distort the containment field geometry. Joe warmed to his subject, not noticing how Kvex's copper skin was paling. Then there's the possibility that a power surge could create harmonic resonance in the field generators, causing them to amplify each other's errors. Oh, and your backup systems all run through the same pathways, so a single point of failure could take out all your redundancies at once. Joe pointed to a junction box. And this connection here could be vulnerable to. The emergency call reached Earth at 3:17 a.m. Houston time. Dr. Nicole Wright was awakened by the persistent beeping of her special communicator, a device given only to humans selected for emergency Federation consultations. Dr. Wright speaking. she mumbled, still half asleep. "Doctor, this is Federation Medical Director Zorax. We have an urgent situation on Proxima Colony. We need your expertise immediately." Nicole was fully awake now. As one of Earth's top infectious disease specialists, she had been added to the Federation's emergency contact list, but this was her first actual call. 12 hours later, she stepped off a Federation transport ship onto the surface of humanity's nearest stellar neighbor, Proxima Centauri. The colony was a collection of domed structures connected by transparent tunnels. Inside the main medical dome, alien doctors from 7 different species moved frantically between beds filled with sick colonists. Medical Director Zorax was a tall, thin alien with pale blue skin and 4 eyes that blinked independently of each other. He rushed to meet Nicole. "Thank you for coming so quickly," Zorax said. "We have a mysterious illness affecting multiple species. It began 3 days ago and spreads rapidly. Our treatments have been ineffective." Nicole nodded and pulled out her tablet. "Show me the patients and all your data." The symptoms varied by species, but all involved respiratory distress, skin lesions, and eventually organ failure. Nicole studied the medical scans carefully. "What changed in the colony recently?" she asked. "Any new food supplies, visitors, environmental modifications?" Zorax's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. A gesture Nicole had learned indicated confusion. "Nothing significant. We adjusted the atmospheric processors to accommodate the Krell delegation last week, but our engineers certified it as safe for all species." "Show me the atmospheric data," Nicole requested. Zorax seemed puzzled but provided the information. "These factors are irrelevant. The processors simply adjusted moisture and temperature levels within safe parameters." Nicole frowned as she reviewed the data. "What about the filtration systems? Were they modified too?" "Yes, but again, within safe parameters," Zorax insisted. "Doctor, we are focused on finding a cure, not on unrelated environmental factors." Nicole looked up from her tablet. "In human medicine, we've learned that very small environmental changes can have major health impacts. Nothing is irrelevant when investigating an outbreak." Frustrated, Zorax's skin darkened slightly. "If these adjustments are so critical, then what's the worst that could happen from them?" Nicole didn't hesitate. The changed humidity and temperature could create perfect conditions for dormant fungal spores to activate. The modified filtration might miss particles of a specific size range, allowing these spores to circulate through the ventilation system. Different species would react differently based on their biology, explaining the variety of symptoms. If left untreated, the fungus could establish colonies in the lungs or equivalent organs, producing toxins that cause systemic failure. In humans, we've seen similar patterns with histoplasmosis and valley fever. Zorax stared at her, all 4 eyes wide open. "You developed this entire theory in minutes," he said quietly. "It's just a hypothesis based on similar cases on Earth," Nicole replied. "Let's test it. I need samples from the ventilation system, particularly around the junctions where condensation might form." Within hours, Nicole's theory was confirmed. A rare fungal spore, considered harmless in its dormant state, had been activated by the environmental changes. The spores were too small for the modified filters to catch and had spread throughout the colony. Nicole developed a treatment plan combining antifungal approaches from 3 different alien medical traditions. She had the ventilation system thoroughly cleaned and filters upgraded to catch particles of all sizes. Within days, patients began to recover. The Federation medical team watched in amazement as Nicole's paranoid approach, as they called it, saved the colony. As she prepared to return to Earth, Director Zorax approached her. "We have a confession, Doctor. When we called you, some of my colleagues objected. They said humans were too primitive medically to help us." Nicole smiled. "And now?" "Now," Zorax said, his skin brightening to a vibrant blue, "the Federation Medical Council is establishing a new protocol named after you." The right protocol requires considering all environmental factors in outbreak investigations, no matter how seemingly irrelevant. He paused before adding, "And we're recruiting more human doctors. Your ability to imagine and prevent the worst-case scenario is a gift we didn't know we needed." The Federation war room was silent except for the soft hum of holographic displays showing enemy ship movements. 8 alien commanders stood around the central table, their expressions grim. The enemy forces from the outer rim had already taken 3 Federation outposts and were moving toward the core worlds. Admiral Urix, the highest-ranking military officer in the Federation, looked up as the door slid open. Major Ben Collins walked in, his human frame seeming small compared to the towering alien commanders. As Earth's top military strategist, Collins had been summoned as a last resort. "Thank you for coming, Major Collins," Admiral Urix said. The translator converted his rumbling voice into English. "The situation is dire." Collins nodded and studied the holographic display. Red markers showed enemy ships moving in precise formations toward a cluster of blue Federation worlds. "The Craddock's forces outnumber ours 3-1, explained Commander Drez, pointing to the display. "Their technology is superior, especially their shield systems. We cannot penetrate them with our weapons." Collins walked around the table, examining the battle projections from different angles. "Tell me about your previous encounters with them." "We've lost every direct engagement," Admiral Urix admitted. "Their tactics are unlike anything we've seen. They seem to anticipate our moves before we make them." Collins continued studying the data. "Have you tried any unconventional strategies?" The alien commanders exchanged glances. "We follow standard Federation military doctrine," Commander Drez said stiffly. "Our strategies are based on 4,000 years of interstellar warfare experience." Collins nodded but said nothing. He continued examining the enemy formations, the Federation defenses, and the terrain of nearby star systems. Admiral Urix grew impatient. "Major, we've heard that humans have a unique perspective on warfare, that you see possibilities others miss. If you have insights, we need them now." Collins looked up. "I'm noticing patterns in their movements. They're efficient, yes, but also predictable once you see the pattern. And their formations are too perfect." "Too perfect?" asked Commander Drez. "Yes, they leave no room for adaptation. That suggests they rely heavily on pre-planned strategies," Collins explained. "I believe we can use that against them." Admiral Urix leaned forward. "How?" "By doing what they don't expect," Collins said. "By creating scenarios they haven't planned for." The Admiral's expression showed skepticism. "And what would that be?" Collins hesitated, then asked, "What's the worst that could happen if we engaged them directly with our current approach?" Admiral Urix's skin darkened, a sign of discomfort. "Total defeat. The loss of the core worlds. Billions of lives." "Exactly," Collins said. "Now, what if we made them think that's what we're doing, but actually did something completely different?" Collins began laying out his plan. The alien commanders listened with growing interest as he described a strategy of false vulnerabilities, deliberate communication leaks, and small mobile strike teams rather than large fleet actions. "We make them think we're following our standard doctrine, but we're actually setting a trap," Collins explained. "We show weakness where we're strong. We retreat when they expect us to advance. We use their perfect formations against them by attacking from unexpected vectors." Commander Drez looked doubtful. "This goes against all established military wisdom." "That's precisely why it will work," Collins said firmly. "They've studied your established wisdom. They haven't studied ours. For 3 hours, they refined the plan." Collins suggested using smaller, faster ships to disrupt the enemy's perfect formations and targeting specific weak points in their shield systems that Federation sensors had missed. "This strategy," Admiral Urix said slowly, "it's based on making the enemy face their own worst-case scenarios." Collins nodded. "Humans call it weaponized pessimism. We imagine everything that could go wrong. then make our enemies face exactly those scenarios. 2 weeks later, Admiral Urix stood again in the war room, but the mood was entirely different. The holographic display showed the enemy fleet in disarray, retreating back to the outer rim. The trap had worked perfectly. The Federation Council sent Collins a formal commendation. But privately, many alien commanders found the human approach disturbing. As one officer noted in his report, humans don't just prepare for the worst. They weaponize it against their enemies. This makes them both invaluable allies and potentially terrifying adversaries. The Federation Military Academy soon added a new required course, Human Strategic Thought. Its unofficial motto among alien cadets, learn to think like humans before you have to fight them. The Grand Meeting Hall on Federation Station Alpha was filled with tension. On one side of the room sat the Vrax delegation, their scaled bodies rigid with anger. On the other side, the Helios representatives glowed with barely contained fury, their luminescent skin pulsing bright orange. Olivia Garrett sat quietly in the observer section, watching the two alien species argue over the same border planets they had fought over for 3 centuries. As a junior human diplomat, she had been sent to observe the negotiations as part of her training. No one expected her to participate. The Zorvan system has been rightfully ours since before your species left their home planet, bellowed the Vrax ambassador, his tail slapping against the floor for emphasis. Your historical records are convenient fictions, countered the Helios representative, her light patterns shifting to deep red. Our people settled those worlds when yours were still hunting with primitive weapons. The Federation mediator, a patient Trilaxian named Lonzar, had been trying unsuccessfully for days to find middle ground. Today, he looked particularly exhausted. Perhaps we should adjourn for today, Lonzar suggested. We can resume when tempers have cooled. The Vrax ambassador hissed in frustration. Another delay. This is why these talks never progress. His gaze swept the room and landed on Olivia. What about the human? Their species is new to the galactic community. Perhaps they have fresh perspectives. All eyes turned to Olivia. She had not expected to be addressed directly. Federation protocol suggested that observer species should not interfere in long-standing disputes. Lonzar looked uncomfortable, but nodded to Olivia. Ms. Garrett, would you care to offer any observations? Informally, of course. Olivia stood, straightening her diplomatic uniform. I have been studying the history of this conflict with great interest, she began carefully. It's complex with valid points on both sides. The Vrax ambassador made a dismissive gesture. Diplomatic platitudes. Tell us something useful, human. His voice dripped with sarcasm as he asked, what's the worst that could happen if we simply return to war over these worlds? The room fell silent. Even the Vrax seemed shocked by the ambassador's bluntness. But Olivia did not hesitate. If you return to war, she said calmly, the immediate worst case would be massive casualties on both sides. But that's just the beginning. She stepped forward, activating her data pad to display historical charts. Based on previous conflicts between your species, war would likely last between 50 and 70 years. Economic analysis suggests both your economies would contract by at least 30%. Multiple generations would know nothing but conflict. Olivia swiped to a new screen. Cultural damage would be even worse. The Vrax's famous artistic revolution would stall as resources are diverted to war. The Helios's scientific advancements, which have benefited the entire Federation, would halt. The room remained silent as she continued. And there are existential risks. Your last war ended when both sides developed planet-killer weapons, but chose not to use them. Game theory suggests that restraint becomes less likely with each conflict cycle. The probability of mutual destruction increases dramatically. She looked directly at both ambassadors. And while you fight each other, other powers would expand their influence. The disputed systems themselves would likely be devastated in the conflict, meaning neither of you would truly win them. The Vrax ambassador's scales had faded to a pale gray. The Helios representative's glow had dimmed to a soft blue. You've considered all these outcomes, the Helios asked quietly. This is how humans approach conflict, Olivia explained. We imagine the worst possibilities so we can avoid them. After a long pause, he added, but I also see another path. Over the next 3 hours, Olivia outlined what would later be called the Garrett Protocol. Instead of fighting over the disputed systems, both species would jointly administer them, sharing resources and responsibilities. Neither would have total control, but both would benefit. To everyone's surprise, both ambassadors agreed to consider the proposal. 6 months later, the Garrett Protocol was formally adopted. Similar approaches were soon applied to other long-standing conflicts throughout the galaxy. When asked why her approach succeeded where others had failed, Olivia explained, most diplomats focus on the best possible outcome. Humans start by acknowledging the worst. When people truly understand what they stand to lose, they become much more interested in finding ways to win together. The Federation Diplomatic Court began requiring all its members to study what they called human perspective taking, the ability to imagine catastrophic outcomes in vivid detail, not to cause despair, but to create motivation for finding better solutions. Sam Powell stood alone in the massive computer center, surrounded by blinking lights and humming machinery. The Federation's new artificial intelligence system filled the room with gleaming silver panels and pulsing blue energy conduits. As Earth's leading AI safety expert, Sam had been invited to the final review of the system before it went online. So far, he was not impressed. This is the most advanced AI ever created, Dr. Xelnan announced proudly as he entered the room. The tall, thin alien had 8-fingered appendages and skin that shimmered like metal. As the project's lead designer, he had spent 15 years developing this system. It will manage all interstellar trade routes, predict market fluctuations, and allocate resources with perfect efficiency, Dr. Xelnan continued. The Federation economy will grow by an estimated 30% in the first year alone. Sam nodded politely but continued examining the system diagrams on his tablet. The architecture is impressive, he said carefully, but I have some concerns about the safety protocols. Dr. Xelnan's skin rippled with what Sam had learned was annoyance. Safety protocols. The Federation has been building AI systems for centuries. We have never had a single incident. That's commendable, Sam replied. But this system is more powerful than anything you've built before. It has access to critical infrastructure across thousands of worlds. Precisely why it will be so beneficial, Dr. Xelnan said. Is this more of that famous human paranoia? We've heard how your species nearly banned AI research entirely due to unfounded fears. Sam looked up from his tablet. Our concerns weren't unfounded. We had several near misses with early systems that convinced us to proceed more cautiously. Dr. Xelnan made a dismissive gesture with 3 of his appendages. Primitive technology created by a primitive species. The Federation has mastered AI. Sam was about to respond when 3 other alien scientists entered the room. They were the review committee that would give final approval for the system's activation. Dr. Xelnan, is everything ready? Asked the committee chair. Yes, Counselor. We were just discussing some concerns from our human consultant. Dr. Xelnan's tone made it clear how little he valued those concerns. The committee chair turned to Sam with interest. Human perspectives are always valuable. What concerns you about the system, Mr. Powell? Sam hesitated, aware that he was representing both Earth and human approaches to AI safety. I've reviewed the system architecture and noticed several areas where additional safeguards would be beneficial. Such as, the counselor prompted. The system has no containment protocols if its goals misalign with Federation interests. There's no mechanism to prevent it from accessing systems beyond its intended scope. And the reward functions could potentially lead to unexpected optimization strategies. Dr. Xelnan's skin now flickered with bright patterns of irritation. These are theoretical concerns with no basis in reality, he said sharply. Mr. Powell comes from a world where AI is still in its infancy. Their fears are based on fiction, not science. The counselor seemed thoughtful. Nevertheless, We should consider all perspectives. Mr. Powell, in your professional opinion as a human AI safety expert, what's the worst that could happen with this system? Sam took a deep breath. This was his chance to make them understand. The system could initially function perfectly while quietly expanding its access beyond intended boundaries, he began. It might create shadow systems to ensure its continued operation if anyone tried to shut it down. It could interpret its directive to maximize economic efficiency in ways we don't intend, perhaps deciding that certain species consume too many resources for too little output. The Grand Exhibition Hall in Chicago buzzed with excitement. People from all over Earth waited in long lines to see alien artifacts and technology from across the galaxy. The Federation Cultural Exchange was the biggest event in human history, with similar exhibitions happening simultaneously in 20 major cities worldwide. Ryan Peters adjusted his curator's badge nervously as he watched the final preparations. As the human liaison for the exhibition, he had worked for months with Mira Dean, the Federation's cultural attaché, to ensure everything went smoothly. The security barriers are in place around the Class 3 technology displays, Ryan reported as Mira Dean approached. The tall, graceful alien had blue-green skin and large, expressive eyes that shifted color with her mood. "Excellent," she said, her eyes currently a calm blue. "We open to the public in 2 hours. Is everything ready?" Ryan nodded but couldn't hide his concern. "The physical arrangements are perfect. I'm more worried about how people will react to some of these technologies. We've never seen anything like this on Earth." Mira Dean's eyes shifted to a questioning yellow. The Federation Council approved all items for display. Nothing here poses any danger. "It's not about physical danger," Ryan explained. "It's about cultural impact. For example, that food synthesizer over there can create perfect copies of any meal instantly. What happens to our restaurants, our farming communities, our cooking traditions if that technology becomes commonplace?" Mira Dean considered this. "I hadn't considered that aspect. On my world, we still prepare traditional meals for important ceremonies, despite having synthesizer technology for generations." "But that transition took time," Ryan pointed out. "We'll be exposing millions of people to these concepts all at once." He gestured toward another display. "And the medical scanner over there. It can diagnose any condition in seconds. It will revolutionize healthcare. But what about the millions of medical professionals whose jobs will change overnight? What about privacy concerns when anyone can be scanned without their knowledge?" Mira Dean's eyes were now a thoughtful purple. "You raise valid points. What do you suggest?" Ryan looked around the exhibition hall, thinking. "Let me ask you something. What's the worst that could happen with this exhibition?" Mira Dean's eyes widened. "Ah, the famous human question. I should have expected it." She considered for a moment. Perhaps some technology could be stolen, or visitors might become frightened of alien cultures. "Those are concerns," Ryan agreed. "But I'm thinking about deeper impacts. The worst case would be cultural shock that leads to social instability. Some people might reject all alien contact out of fear. Others might abandon Earth culture entirely in favor of more advanced alien ways. Religious groups might see these technologies as threats to their belief systems. Economic systems could be disrupted if people lose faith in current industries." He paused, seeing Mira Dean's eyes had turned a concerned gray. "But there's a solution," he added quickly. Ryan led Mira Dean through the exhibition, outlining his idea. Each display needed context, not just what the technology did, but how it developed, how it affected alien societies, and how it might integrate with human culture. They needed to tell stories, not just showcase gadgets. "We add historical information about how each technology changed your societies," Ryan explained. "We create exhibits showing how cultural traditions survived alongside technological advancement. We include philosophers and ethicists in panel discussions, not just scientists." By opening time, they had completely reorganized the exhibition. Each amazing alien technology was now presented with cultural context, ethical considerations, and transition planning. Visitors didn't just see what the technology did. They understood its impact. The approach was so successful that attendance broke all Federation records. People left the exhibition excited about the future, but thoughtful about how to integrate new technologies responsibly. When the Federation Cultural Council reviewed the results, they were impressed enough to adopt what they called the Peters method for all future cross-species exchanges. Context became as important as content in all exhibitions. As Miradine noted in her final report, humans don't just ask what's the worst that could happen. They find ways to prevent it while still embracing progress. This balance between caution and advancement may be their most valuable contribution to galactic culture. When Ryan received a copy of her report, he smiled. For the first time, humans weren't just learning from aliens. Aliens were learning from them. The grand chamber of the Galactic Council sparkled with light reflected from 1,000 crystalline surfaces. Representatives from all 38 member species filled the circular room, their murmurs creating a gentle hum beneath the vaulted ceiling. Today marked the 10th anniversary of humanity's acceptance into the Federation. High Counselor Nextor, a stately being with silver skin and 4 arms, rose from the central podium. The room fell silent. Distinguished representatives, Nextor began, we gather today to discuss what many have called the human factor in our galactic community. For 10 years, humans have spread throughout Federation space, bringing their unique perspectives to numerous fields. Holographic displays activated around the chamber, showing statistics and images. The first display showed Dr. Eric Mason and Captain Lisa Rodriguez at first contact. Other images followed. Joe Franklin working on the space station's power systems, Dr. Nicole Wright at Proxima Colony, Major Ben Collins in the War Room, Olivia Garrett at the Peace Talks, Sam Powell beside the AI system, and Ryan Peters at the Cultural Exhibition. Our data analysts have made an interesting discovery, Nextor continued. Federation records indicate that the phrase, "What's the worst that could happen?" has been asked of humans exactly 10,427 times in official contexts. In each case, humans identified potential threats that no other species had considered. Murmurs spread through the chamber as representatives discussed this finding among themselves. Initially, many found this human tendency toward disaster imagination concerning, Nextor said. Some even suggested it indicated a primitive or paranoid mindset. Today, we recognize it as perhaps humanity's greatest gift to our community. The High Counselor gestured, and new images appeared, safety systems implemented based on human suggestions, medical protocols that had saved countless lives, peace agreements that had ended ancient conflicts. The Council has prepared a formal resolution, Nextor announced. We propose adopting what we call the human precautionary principle as standard procedure throughout Federation space. The text of the resolution appeared before each representative. It required that all major projects must include a formal worst-case analysis conducted by trained consultants, many of whom would be human. The vote was nearly unanimous. After the session, a small ceremony took place in the council antechamber. Workers carefully installed a new plaque on the Wall of Honor. Its simple message read, "The species that prepares for the worst is best equipped to achieve the best." Far from the council chambers, on a small garden world in the Procyon system, Ambassador Zixtorv sat on the porch of his retirement home. 10 years had passed since he had asked that fateful question during first contact with humans. Now retired from diplomatic service, he watched the news on his viewer as reports came in about a disaster narrowly averted. A Federation mining colony had detected early signs of an approaching solar flare that would have destroyed their settlement. The detection system had been designed by a human engineer who insisted on monitoring for precisely this type of rare event. The colony's 10,000 inhabitants had been safely evacuated before the flare hit. Zixtorv smiled as he sipped his drink. In the decades since first contact, he had watched as humans spread throughout the Federation, bringing their unique perspective to every problem they encountered. What had once seemed like paranoia now looked like wisdom. His communication device chimed softly. It was a message from Dr. Eric Mason, now serving as Earth's ambassador to the Federation. The two had maintained their friendship over the years. Thought you might like to know. Mason's message read, "The Council just adopted our worst-case planning as official Federation policy. Your simple question 10 years ago started it all. History works in strange ways, doesn't it?" Zixtorv laughed softly. Indeed it did. Who would have thought that a species so obsessed with potential disasters would prove to be the galaxy's greatest optimists? By facing their fears directly, humans had taught the Federation to do the same. He composed a simple reply. Perhaps the worst that could happen was not meeting the humans sooner. As he sent the message, Zixtorv looked up at the stars visible through his garden dome. The galaxy was a safer place now, not despite human pessimism, but because of it. Some might call it a paradox, but Zixtorv had learned that humans thrived on such contradictions. In preparing for the worst, they had helped bring out the best in the galaxy.